Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So we're just having a quiet evening at home after a very busy day, busy weekend.
Yeah.
Just post Radhastami. And you may hear some different noises because we're just having a cup of tea near the kitchen where the laundry's going, and outside there's a tornado or hurricane. And
just when we turn the camera on, the washing machine decides to freak out.
Yeah, that's just normal.
So normally is. Canto 4, Chapter 8, Text 31.
No, 34.
Oh, because we read in the car.
I was kind of anticipating that was fun.
4:8:34.
Okay.
Om Namo
Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Excuse me. Text 34. Every man should act like this. When he meets a person more qualified than himself, he should be very pleased. When he meets someone less qualified than himself, he should be compassionate toward him. And when he meets someone equal to himself, he should make friendship with him. In this way, one is never affected by the threefold miseries of this material world. Generally, when we find someone more qualified than ourselves, we become envious of him. When we find someone less qualified, we deride him. And when we find someone equal, we become very proud of our activities. These are the causes of all material tribulations. The great sage Narada therefore advised that a devotee should act perfectly. Instead of being envious of a more qualified man or woman, one should be jolly to receive him. Instead of being oppressive to a less qualified man, one should be compassionate toward him just to raise him to the proper standard. And when one meets an equal, instead of being proud of one's own activities before him, one should treat him as a friend. One should also have compassion for the people in general who are suffering due to forgetfulness of Krishna. These important functions will make one happy within this material world. So it's nice instructions that we can test, where maybe we can do this for one day tomorrow or like 1 week. No, just to see how it feels, and also how we maybe don't do it, or to an extent that we don't do it. I'm not assuming it's totally that we don't do it, but just to catch ourselves doing this. I think that's quite a nice like personal development instruction. Nowadays it's all about coaching and personal development, so I think that's a very good whether you're trying to be a Hare Krishna or not. Honestly, it's nice, because it is true that generally false ego gets in the way, insecurity, jealousy, envy, whatever. So it's like, nice to see how our interactions would improve and lift our consciousness and other people's consciousness if we acted better, regardless of how someone else may respond, but just where we're coming from. I think it would be pretty powerful, like a strong character, like, because we're not bothered how someone else responds to it, but I'm not going to be fazed by like it says, say, insecurity or envy or whatever. I'll just treat you accordingly.
Interesting. Somehow I feel like unpacking this person purport would be really useful, because I'm not sure. I mean, I get the point. Rupa Goswami explains that we should all have 3 relationships in our lives. seniors, peers, and juniors. And of those, my understanding is 25% of our time should be spent with seniors, 25% with juniors, and 50% with peers. And inside of that, peer-to-peer relationships are the most difficult for us to actually have and establish for most people. They're okay to recognize that they're the senior in the situation, or they're okay to recognize that they're the junior, but to actually have persons who we feel equal to as a peer, and we're able to interact with and communicate and have friendships with, is not always so easy. What I think interested me is that Srila Prabhupada explains that in this way one is never affected by the threefold miseries of this material world. Now, I can't remember if I said it on here, but the other day I was definitely speaking to one person and mentioned how when I first heard about the threefold miseries, let me do it like that, the threefold miseries, I was thinking, my God, I wish someone had taught me about the threefold miseries in 3rd grade, so I wouldn't have had to live my whole life thinking that somehow I could change the reality of the situation. Now you might be asking, what are the threefold miseries? So we could leave it up to yourselves to put the threefold miseries in the box below. Should we do that or not?
No, if you're going to mention it, you should explain it, because not everyone comments in the box below.
All right. So the threefold miseries are, they're called kleshas. So adhyatmic klesha, which is distresses or miseries caused by our own body and mind. Adibhotic klesha is miseries or sufferings, distresses caused by someone else's body and mind. And adidaivic klesha, which is the like what's happening outside right now. There's strong winds, or it's raining, or it's snowing, or it's freezing cold, it's blisteringly hot. So this is devi. This is the you could say the divine ashram, or the devatas. This is nature. So these are the threefold miseries. Now, what I'm questioning here is, it's interesting that, well, Prabhupada doesn't say it. Shukadeva Goswami says it. Well, actually, Narada Muni is saying it to Dhruva Maharaj, that if you develop these 3 types of relationships and you act in accordance accordingly with seniors, peers, and juniors, then you will not, actually says, you will never be affected by the threefold miseries of this material world. I mean, I think that's extremely powerful. Any thoughts?
I said my thoughts.
Yeah, I just thought on this point. I think it just goes to show that if we properly conduct ourselves, like you mentioned, it's all about self-improvement.
Yes.
Self-development.
Self-coaching.
Self-coaching. If you coach yourself to deal with persons, because usually, like it says, we're envious of more qualified people. We are oppressive of less qualified people. Means we lord it over. People who are more qualified, we're envious of them because we want to be the Lord. Less qualified, we exhibit our capacity to be Lord over them. And when we're with equals, we usually just boast about ourselves, which we see often happens. You know, that people just sit around and say, well, last weekend, mate, I did this, I did that. And the other one says, no, but last weekend, I did this, I did that. And so, you get that kind of thing going on. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to leave it out there. If you have any suggestions or thoughts of how by these actions we become free from the sufferings of the material energy, specifically the threefold miseries, Adhyatmika, Adibautic, and Adidaivic, then put it in the comments, Donna.
Just so you know, that washing machine is on its final spin. It will be quiet in a minute if you can hear it.
And in case you didn't hear it and you didn't notice it, then forget whatever you did.
But it's true about it's very interesting when you start to read about communication, because we teach this on the devotee care course, and then we're also doing this spiritual grief counseling course, and how to care for people.
It's called Impact of Grief in Spiritual Life.
Okay, maybe I just got spiritual grief. Freudian slip, maybe not. But you realise how the majority of people, and I'm not excluding myself, like I'm like that, we just like to talk about ourselves. Really, really. And it's very, I didn't want to say you. Like, there was this devotee, there's this lady, random, no one knows, and they were talking about their health issues, and it was actually similar to my dear old dad. So I was listening to her health issues just today, actually, and then I interjected when I got a chance to say, well, this happened to my dad, and it's just quite serious, and it's the same health ailment. And she paused while I spoke, and then when I stopped speaking, it was like she hadn't heard me, and continued from where she'd left off about herself, if that makes sense. I felt like, did you hear me? Do I get an acknowledgement, and are you going to add something to that? But it's interesting, not to point fingers, I'm saying it's actually ingrained in us as a conditioned soul. It's like, that's the point. It's like the false ego. It's me. So even when you're talking, I'm trying to take something out of it where I can attach it to, I did that, or I can tell you about this time when, okay, you just tell me something, but I'll tell you what happened to me as well, if that makes any sense. It's really, and you really notice it once you get into this and become aware of these sort of things. Otherwise, you don't. It's like,
it's normal. Everyone just banters back and forth generally with no one listening, everyone just waiting to speak.
And you feel unfulfilled, actually.
The thing is that we're learning, and maybe not always putting into practice, is that actually genuinely people just want to be heard and listened to. And because most people aren't really listening to them, they don't listen and no one listens to them, then when they get a chance to speak, they just ramble on and they do it. But if you genuinely, and you can try this also as a self-development exercise, you can try what is known as reflective or empathic listening, which means that you actually really try to, and it's listening in the mode of goodness, which is discussed in the Bhagavad Gita. It means that you actually don't listen for the purpose of responding, but you listen for the purpose of reflecting back or showing empathy. That's like, wow, I heard what you said, and this is what you said, and I get that. Not that, and I did this, and well, you should do this, and like that, which is what we often do. Is that what you were saying?
No, I'm missing. That was just a joke.
Okay, text 35. Spend a lot of time on this one. Dhruva Uvacha. Dhruva Maharaj said, "My dear Lord Narada Ji, for a person whose heart is disturbed by the material conditions of happiness and distress, whatever you have so kindly explained for attainment of peace of mind is certainly a very good instruction. But as far as I am concerned, I am covered by ignorance, and this kind of philosophy does not touch my heart." Wow, 5-year-old kids, like, that sounds good for someone who in general is disturbed by the material conditions of happiness and distress. Of course, I'm not sure what the distinction is there, but being covered by ignorance means he doesn't even know he's experiencing happiness and distress. He's just basically fried. And Dhruva Maharaj was fried. I went to the forest, upset, angry, disturbed. So that's all very nice. Thank you so much, Naradaji, but doesn't make any sense to me. I think it's a great point, actually. And one very senior devotee once said to me that, he said, this Prabhupada disciple, he said, I have many senior godbrothers who can sit on the Vyasa and speak shloka after shloka after shloka, verse after verse in perfect Sanskrit. He said, and somehow they never touch the heart of people who are listening. He said, but on the other hand, I have godbrothers who, God knows if they're even really following strictly, probably couldn't quote more than 2 lines of any shloka together, and that even would be messed up. But somehow when they speak to people, and even very influential people, they become enamored by them because they speak from the heart to the heart of that person. So sometimes it's not about speaking high philosophy. It's actually about, just as we just said, about being with that person and touching the heart, hearing where they're at. And maybe it's an interesting thing because Narada Muni is Narada Muni. Anyway, he's like the spiritual master of 90% of the people in the Bhagavatam. And of course, he's obviously very expert in the way that he usually and generally delivers communication and instruction. But here you can see that maybe he's either done this to show us an example of the fact that things don't always, hit the heart exactly, so we get to see that, or he decided to give some instructions to little Dhruva, but little Dhruva was kind of like, whatever, kind of thing, So anyway, let's read the purport. There are various classes of men. One class is called akamis, referring to those who have no material desire. Desire must exist, either material or spiritual. Material desire arises when one wants to satisfy one's personal senses. One who is ready to sacrifice anything to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead can be said to have spiritual desire. Dhruva did not accept the instruction given by the great Saint Narada because he thought himself unfit for such instruction, which prohibited all material desires. Interesting. It is not a fact, however, that those who have material desires are prohibited from worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the essential instruction from the life of Dhruva. He frankly admitted that his heart was full of material desires. He was very much affected by the cruel words of his stepmother, whereas those who are spiritually advanced do not care about anyone's condemnation or adoration. Interesting. So if you're spiritually advanced, you're just not affected by what the material energy kicks out to you, which I think is the answer to my previous question. So being spiritually advanced also means conducting ourselves properly according to material relationships. That's interesting. And when we're spiritually advanced, we conduct ourselves properly according to material circumstances, senior, peer, junior, and then we're not affected. Like you were saying, no matter whether they like it or not, don't like it, appreciate it or don't appreciate it, it's okay. I'm acting proper here. So whatever you're doing is whatever you're doing, and I get that, but I'm trying to act proper. That's interesting. Although there are some parts of this, one who is ready to sacrifice, that's material desire rising when one side, anyway, main point is that, as Prabhupada is saying, the main point of the Dhruva Maharaj pastime is that Dhruva had material desires, but he was not prohibited from taking to devotional service, getting purified, and even achieving the goal of his material desires while at the same time making great spiritual advancement. Yeah?
All right. Next paragraph.
Okay.
In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that persons who are actually advanced in spiritual life do not care for the dual behavior of this material world. But Dhruv Maharaj frankly admitted that he was not beyond the affliction of material distress and happiness. He was confident that the instructions given by Narada was valuable, and yet he could not accept it. The question raised here is whether or not a person afflicted by material desires is fit to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The answer is that everyone is fit to worship him. Even if one has many material desires to fulfill, he should take to Krishna consciousness and worship the Supreme Lord Krishna, who is so merciful that he fulfills everyone's desires. Through this narration, it will become very clear that no one is barred from worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even if one has many material desires.
Thank God.
Which is true, because otherwise there would be no point to the temples, to the book distribution, to the preaching, because we don't go out there and do this outreach and try to save people, as it were.
Save the already pure devotees.
The pure, Paramahamsas, whatever. So that's the point. And my understanding, to be honest with you, the short time I've been practicing Krishna consciousness, is that you just add Krishna to your life. That's it. It doesn't have to be some major life ashram type job, whatever situation change. It's like just think of how he can fit in. It was interesting. I was talking to someone quickly because we're going over time, but there was one lady today. She said, "Oh, you must," because we went to do a samskara yagya ceremony today, and we got there at just before 8:30. So she said, "Oh, it must be a long day for you." After a couple of hours, she said, you must have woke up really early. What time did you wake up? I said, well, we normally wake up at 3. And her eyes fell out of her face. She's like, wait, what? And then the next question was, why? I said, because we choose to. Important point. And then she's like, okay, still not convinced. And I said, well, what time do you get up to go to work? So she goes, 5. I said, I see. How about you get up at that time, and the day you don't have to go into work and do some devotional practice, some meditation, would you do it? No, she said. I said, would you do some exercise, wake up early at that time? No. I said, no, because you choose to get up and sacrifice and perform that austerity at that time of the day for what you're determined and interested in doing. And I said, the same way I choose to do this. And she said, but you don't get tired? I said, I think it's coming up to 27 odd years, if not more, that I've been choosing to do this. So not really, no. Just as someone who has that regime of work or exercise, and a lot of
routine, a
lot of people, especially like on some of the running forums I'm on, they get up at 4:30 in the morning to go running, because then you've got kids, you've got your spouse, whatever, you've got work. So if you want to fit in what you think is important, you will fit it in. So
amazing, wonderful point.
On
Okay,
that note,
well, we had a short one the other day. This one's a little longer, but thank you for joining us. Please read the Srimad Bhagavatam. Please remember that you can sponsor Bhagavatam sets for India, for Africa, or for the UK and Europe. If you want to, let us know. Please do it. Bhadra Pranim campaign is coming to a close, and we were just hearing today that the UK needs to distribute, I think the Manor needs to distribute 35 Bhagavatam sets a day over the next 5 days in order to hit its target. So, if you're up for it, please let us know. Hare Krishna, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.